Hi, Chaz, how's it going, bro? Thanks for your video. This is my response to it. You brought up a few points that I'd like to address. I think the most interesting challenge you made to the antinatalist approach was gesturing at the fact that if human beings discontinue, then that still leaves the problem of animals suffering. You know, and he suggested that if human beings become extinct, then and if they somehow destroy life on Earth just before they themselves become extinct, then the animals, the bacteria or whatever's left behind can develop consciousness, and then we're back to where we were before. But I think evolution is an extremely slow process, and I think you're underestimating this slightly. I looked this up actually for my own knowledge, and this is what I found. The Earth 4.5 billion years old, and then it took approximately 700 million years for simple cells to emerge, and then it took a further 1.8 billion years for simple cells to evolve into complex cells, and then it took a further billion years for complex cells to evolve into multicellular life, and then from multicellular life it took a further 400 million years to evolve into simple animals, and then from that point it took a further 100 million years for life to evolve into fish and proto-amphibians, and then eventually human beings emerged about 200,000 years ago. So it depends how much of life we could wipe out if we couldn't wipe out everything. I mean, if we could wipe out everything apart from simple cells, then it would take like 3.3 billion years to evolve for evolution to make things evolve from simple cells to fish and proto-amphibians, and 3.3 billion years is an awful mighty chunk of 4 billion years before the sun consumes the Earth. If we could only wipe out life up to the multicellular life sort of stage, then it would take about 700 million years for human beings to evolve. I mean, obviously this is what happened in the past, and it's not like we can reproduce this experiment. So it is, to a certain extent, there is a large degree of speculation involved in these ruminations. But it seems to me that's an awful long time, you know, and that's a lot of suffering free, pleasure deprived free, sentience free period of time, you know, and that would be better than what the situation is now. I mean, what would be acceptable to me? I mean, I accept that there are only partial solutions, because the universe had the temerity to summon forth, you know, sentience in this world, or this universe. It's quite inexplicable, really, but here we are, reflecting on this. It's staggering. It's staggering, and obviously all there are is partial solutions. I mean, if the human race voluntarily chose to become extinct, then of course that would incur a great deal of suffering and mental anguish, you know, and I sympathise with that. But sometimes doing the right thing is the most difficult thing to do. At the end of the day, from a utilitarian perspective, a negative utilitarian perspective, then we are obliged to choose the lesser of two evils. So I would argue that we have a moral obligation to choose the lesser of two evils, which would be to voluntarily discontinue the human race. And I think we have a moral obligation to do this, because although if the human race voluntarily discontinued, this would inevitably bring about a great deal of distress and anguish and everything, that distress and suffering would be considerably less, I'm willing to bet, than the alternative scenario in which we just blithely continue as if there's not a problem here at all, and then just continue this this system whereby we're bringing sentient beings into existence that can suffer, and we're imposing life on them for an indefinite period of time. You know, how many millions of years in the future? I mean, the amount of pain and suffering that will entail is just mind-blowing, and I'm sure that would by far exceed any distress or inconvenience or suffering that would be incurred by voluntarily discontinuing the human race now. But then, of course, you're right, you know, and Pyro's right, as much as I hate to accept it, you know, people just aren't going to buy this. I mean, he said, you know, well, we just shouldn't exist, like that's going to happen. And it's kind of a crude rebuttal to my arguments, but nevertheless, it's got weight behind it, you know. And I think if you're going to be a sophisticated antinatalist, then you have to factor in the fact that people aren't just simply going to buy this. I mean, you have to factor in that people just simply aren't going to buy this. At the present moment in time, anyway. I mean, as I say, I mean, if we could get this meme, you know, and make it easily accessible to people and in the social consciousness, then I think it would make people think a great deal more deeply about the issues of antinatalism than people currently do. I mean, people currently, I'm sure, oftentimes think on what colour car they would like more than, you know, the actual ethics or moral implications of bringing a new child or children into the world. And I think that this is something that definitely has to change, and that's what I would advocate at the moment. Just a broader awareness, really, of the absolutely problematic nature of bringing new life into the world. And I agree with you about, you know, people believing in God, people believing in some kind of quantum God wherever there's a gap, and people postulate the existence of a God, and it's I think this shows how irrational people are, you know, and it frightens and perturbs me somewhat, because the rationality has very little to do with what it is to be human, you know, and this is not right, you know. It's disturbing to me, because there's just so much irrationality in the world. It's like assisted suicide. I mean, there's like 3 or 4 countries where assisted suicide is permissible, and 1 state in America, and that's about it. You know, even in societies that are, you know, declare themselves to be, you know, secular, like Sweden, but they don't have assisted suicide either. But I'm digressing here. But I mean, I could go on about you know, creating life in laboratories, and people say, you know, oh, that's playing God, that's morally problematic, but they don't acknowledge the fact that it's problematic creating new life through normal conventional means. I mean, why should it be unethical to produce life through, like, test tube babies, but not unethical to just allow nature, blind forces, to take control of the process and to and to procreate through natural means. I mean, at least if you're creating life in test tubes, then you've got some measure of control over it. So if anything, that should be less morally problematic than actually bringing people into existence through conventional means, which involves necessarily like random processes that are not in the least predictable or controllable. You talked about the you talked about the court case thing that I said, because I said, procreating is like drink driving, and we should regard procreating in the same way we see drink driving as an extremely risky endeavour that could result in serious harm and suffering, and therefore when we prosecute people who drink driving, we should do as much as we can and impose severe penalties to ensure that we reduce as much as possible the possibility of people drink driving. And you threw onto the table the murderer scenario. Okay, you convict a murderer, and we don't prosecute him according to the worst case scenario. But I chose the drink driving crime very carefully, because I think that the parallels between drink driving and procreating are irresistible. If you drink and drive, then you're taking a risk, and there's extremely unforeseen circumstances, and that's the reason I chose drink driving, because it's like procreation, are a lot of unforeseen circumstances, and that's not the case if you murder somebody. If you murder somebody, then you've committed a crime, and you've taken somebody else's life, and the court case can reflect on that and then impose a penalty, in accordance with how they regard the seriousness of that crime. But if you drink and drive, if the court finds someone who's been drink driving, then they don't know what the circumstances could potentially have been, and then they have to envisage what the worst case scenario would be, and then throw that at the person who's been convicted of drink driving. So I think it was a little bit disingenuous of you to bring the murderer example into that discourse. I think that'll sum up what I wanted to say. I'm sure I've missed some points, but if I have, just remind me. Take care.